A lot of people today know that vinyl records can be highly collectible and worth a lot of money. But did you know that's also the case for some CDs as well? Hi there, my name is Aaron. In today's video, I want to show you the top 10 most expensive CDs ever sold on Discogs. Now, some of these CDs have sold for thousands of dollars, and I was surprised to see which artists did and did not make the list. You got to stick around to the end of this video to see what the most expensive CD ever sold on Discogs is and just how much somebody paid for it. Now, those of you who are familiar with using Discogs will know that it's kind of impossible to find a top 10 list like this on their platform. Well, I've been working in the music industry for almost 25 years now, and I've made a few friends along the way, one of which works at Discogs. And I emailed him and just asked, could you possibly pull the top 10 most expensive CDs ever sold on your platform? And he did, and sent them to me. So that's how I was able to compile this information. I will use that list to go to each sold page and show you the amounts, what they sold for, and explain each title in a little bit more detail. So this video is not sponsored by Discogs, but it wouldn't be possible without them. So thanks to them for providing me with this information. Now, for anyone new to Discogs, it's an online database that helps catalog someone's music collection. It also has a marketplace feature where people can buy and sell records, CDs, cassettes, and more. Because of this marketplace feature, Discogs can track the value of a sold item with a low, median, and high price, which helps collectors put a value on each item they own as well as their entire collection. All right, let's start with number 10 here on our list, and it is coming from an artist that we are all familiar with, and I'm actually kind of not surprised to see this one on here. This is the Cutting Edge 1965 through 1966 Bootleg Series Volume 12 Collector's Edition by Bob Dylan. Now, this was originally released in 2015, and you're gonna have to give me a little grace on this one because it is definitely a CD box set, but it also includes 9 vinyl 45 or 7 inches also included in this box set. Now, if you look over here on the right, it's the lowest that it's ever sold is $111, but the highest it sold is $2,600. If you look closely, you'll see that there were only 5,000 copies made worldwide. Here's just sort of an overview of what this box set looks like for anyone that's not familiar with the packaging. When we look at the sales history overall, you can see that actually several copies have sold of this box set. And as we go through this list, you're going to see where some of these sold, there's actually not that many that have sold, but this one it's sold consistently. But it's kind of all over the map in terms of dollar amounts. For instance, you'll see here that the highest amount ever sold was in the year 2022, and it sold for $2,600. But you can see it kind of dropped after that, and then there's kind of been sort of a median value in the $1,000 range. In fact, it most recently sold in January of this year, 2025, for $1,200. So again, it's an 18 CD box set, and it comes with 9 45s and also all sorts of books and things that are included. So that is what's coming in at number 10 here on our list. Now, number 9 was kind of an interesting release when I started to do some research on it. Now, this is from a band called Coil, and it's simply labeled Live Box. There's a lot of interesting things going on here, but if you look over here on the right, you'll see that it sold for the lowest amount at $200, and the highest it sold is $2,604.17. What makes this so unique is that it was limited to only 23 copies, and it looks like the box sets were actually hand-drawn and designed by Ian Johnstone. And the fact that he only made 23 copies, actually none of them are identical. So if you have one of these, it is actually very rare because you've got a limited edition of 1 of 23 that looks different than all other 23 copies that are out there. Now, I'm not that familiar with the band Coil. I did do a little bit of digging yesterday and listen. Seems kind of more of like an avant-garde electronic vibe to it. I actually want to listen more. You gotta love some of these song titles here. Animals Dream Differently in Winter. the word that lights unites its space. That's great. Where's my favorite one? Fear of the bee means the honey is for me. That's great. I actually want to really dig in and listen to more of this. But here's a photo of somebody took a picture of the box that they received and uploaded it. But again, whatever this one looks like, if you've got one of the other 23, it's going to look differently. Looking here at the sales history, you'll see that it was sort of selling in the $250 to $500 range, and then it suddenly peaked in 2014, selling at $2,604. But it's actually, and then it dropped again, but then it actually jumped again and recently sold for $2,496. Recently, in fact, just January of this year. So it's still selling for a high price, and this actually does look to be a pretty cool collectible item. I mean, it's got to be cool to only own one of 23 copies of a CD box set. And then that's the one that's coming in at number 9 here on our list. Now we're going to jump into something a little bit more familiar with this next release. It is from Michael Jackson, and it is actually a CD maxi single, so it's not even a full album, of the song called Smile. If you look here on the right, you can see that the lowest this has ever sold is $1,288, the highest $2,835. If you look closely on the cover art, it looks like Charlie Chaplin there, but it's actually Michael Jackson dressed as Charlie Chaplin. Why is this maxi single so important? Well, if we look at the information here, you can see that this was never released because the single was canceled at the last minute. All of the official pressings that include the Chaplin picture sleeve of Smile, they were all withdrawn and destroyed just days before the release date, save a few that managed to escape, making this one of the most rare Michael Jackson collector items of all time. Now let's look and see how many times this is actually sold. And it's sold 3 times. So maybe the rare few that they mentioned in the notes that escaped, maybe those are the ones that have those are the only ones that have sold here. The most recent selling date was actually May 30th of 2022. And that's where it sold for $2,835. So if you're ever out in the wild and you stumble on this Smile maxi single by Michael Jackson, provided still that there are any that still exist, be sure to grab one ASAP. Now this next one is by a group that I just had to go see if I could find some more information on. And luckily I was able to find some rips of this album on YouTube to listen to. Now this is by a band called Runner, and the album is Falling Hearts. Well, this one's odd because the lowest it's ever sold is basically $26, but the highest that it's sold is $3,000. Now this was released in South Korea in 1991 under sort of the heavy metal rock genre. And I actually listened to it, and it's definitely kind of in that hair metal vein that kind of probably would have been phasing out in 1991 if you consider that near the end of that year, Nirvana kind of blew that entire genre out of the water with the grunge and alternative revival. So looking at this certain release was only released in Korea by Hiji Records. And actually, I think right after this album was released, this band changed its name to Desire. So that's kind of all the information that I have on this. If you have any more information, let me know. Now, it looks like, looking at this, kind of what I was saying earlier about 1991, it looks like maybe that this album was recorded in 1987. So it was probably recorded well before the Nirvana sort of snuck in, but for some reason it was not released until 1991. Now here's just sort of an overview of what this album looks like in the rare instance that you might be out shopping and run across a South Korean copy of Runner's Falling Hearts. This is what to look out for. This CD has only sold 3 times, and it is all over the map, all right? Look here. In 2021, somebody sold a used copy for $3,000. And then somebody in 2022 was like, you know what? I've got a sealed copy. I'm going to sell it for $26. I don't know. That kind of cracks me up because normally if people are looking to sell something, they're going to look and see what it had recently sold at in Discogs. So How they decided to drop it down to 26 from 3,000 is interesting. If you like obscure hair metal, go check out Runner on YouTube and listen to a few songs. Now, as someone who loves collecting rare CDs, I'm always on the lookout for obscure rap and hip hop, especially from the 90s era. And this is a great example why. Because the next entry on our list is from a group called G Squad. The album is Visuology, a study of self-perception. Now, this came out in 1995 on Champagne Records. From what I can tell here in the notes, this group was from New Orleans, Louisiana. Looking at this release, there's nothing fancy about it. I think it only has 9 songs on it, and it's just, your typical single CD release. Nothing fancy at all. There was only 3 copies of this that's been sold on Discogs. It looks like the first copy sold for $1,000 and the highest copy sold for $3,000 back in 2023. Now this is actually kind of interesting. If you look here, it also recently sold for $2,500 last year. But if you look at this, just look at the condition that somebody paid for in that amount. Now this is listed as a 1995 Rare New Orleans hip-hop gangster rap CD. And if you look closely, it says the disc was sealed. It had mold inside the shrink. And they opened it to check if the disc was rusted or damaged. The disc has small spots, mold on the disc. Never played or cleaned copy. Kudos to this Discogs seller for being as honest as possible. And I'm impressed that somebody still paid $2,500 for a moldy disc. Now for this release, I actually had to look up the pronunciation for this composer's name. This is Herbert von Karajan, and this is his complete recordings on Deutsche Grammophon and Decca. The highest this has ever sold is $3,020. You gotta zoom in on something here because I really want to point this out. This is a massive size box set, okay? This has 330 CDs included, 24 DVDs, and 2 Blu-rays. All right, let's just look at this. Let me give you a little bit more information. This is everything that Karajan ever recorded for Deutsche Grammophon and Decca, and it was limited to 2,500 box sets, and they were all numbered. But let me just show you how big this box set is. All right, here it is. Now, as you can see, this thing is massive. Again, 330 CDs and not counting DVDs and even some Blu-rays that were included. So this is a very large box set. If you look at the sales histories on this one, again, it's sold frequently considering its high price. Again, when you're talking about the value of CDs, a lot of times box sets play into account here. And I do believe there might be 1 or 2 more on this list, but stick around because there's some very rare single CD releases in here that are worth even more money than this. Now, as we're continuing to go through this list, I just want to take a quick minute to mention that I actually have an email newsletter that I would love for you to consider signing up for. If you go to the first pinned comment in the comment section of this video, you'll see a link there. If you join that mailing list, it's a great way to interact with me directly. All you have to do is reply to an email and it'll come directly to me. And it's just a place where I can be able to send out some more interesting information on items like this or items that are for sale or places where I'm going to be selling at record shows or vintage shows coming up. So consider signing up for that email list for more information about content like this in the future. Okay, here's one that I totally absolutely surprised me and I'm still trying to wrap my head around it. This is Valerie Carter's Midnight Over Honey River. Last sold this year, but the lowest it's ever sold is $37 basically, and the highest is $3,082. Now I did a little research to find out who Valerie Carter was. She was a very popular background singer for a lot of artists, a lot of classic rock artists over the years, and she kind of ran around in the same scene as like, I think Linda Ronstadt, people of that nature. And there's actually a couple of albums, not this one, but there's a couple albums that you can find on streaming and you can listen to. She really has a very lovely voice, but I am still not sure why this sold for as much money as it did. When we look at the sales history, you can see that they're all basically fairly cheap, way down there at the bottom. But in 2021, it sold for $3,082, which was quite the spike. When I go through and actually look at the listing for the $3,000, I thought it was actually kind of funny because the comments actually said it's in stock, but that it's new vinyl, not used, double CD edition. So I don't think that, I don't know if this is maybe miscatalogued and there's a vinyl version as well that somebody listed here, or if it was in fact the double CD version. But whatever it was, it sold for $3,000 rather than all the other copies selling in the, $40 to $150 range. Now, when I saw this band's name listed on the list that was sent to me, I could not believe it. But once I dug into it, it kind of made a little bit more sense. Now, this is Def Leppard's Adrenalize album on CD that was released in 1994. Now, before you go rushing off thinking that you have a $3,000 CD in your possession, hold on. This is actually a special release that they did just for fans. Now, this is actually a 2 CD release. It was limited edition, numbered, and special edition. Now, let me show you. First of all, it's the lowest it's ever sold is $548. The highest, $3,658. So let's talk about what makes this one so special. Because, I mean, come on, it's Adrenalize. Like, Let's Get Rocked was a fun song, but, like, this isn't even, like, in my opinion, the best Def Leppard. All right, here we go. Now, this was actually released in a mahogany box. And like I said, it was a collector's edition. They only made 1,000 copies, and they released it through their official Def Leppard fan club in 1994. Now, this actually contains a signed certificate of authenticity, along with 3 booklets and a steel plectrum. It's I was really hoping to get the word plectrum into a YouTube video. So here we go. Mark that off my goal list. So looking at the sales history, it's only actually sold 4 times, and it at its peak was that $3,658. That was sort of its first sale, and it kind of dropped off since then, maybe just right around $500 or a little bit more, and it slowly kind of worked its way up, selling last year for $2,417. So I'm not sure if you are someone who bought the original 1,000 copies of this when it was announced, but if you are and you're sitting on it, it looks like it might be slowly increasing in value, but it certainly sold at its highest several years ago. Now, a lot of us are going to be familiar with this next artist, and that is Eminem. His Slim Shady EP, released in 1997 on Web Entertainment. It has sold at the lowest for $83, but at the highest, $3,800. So what's the big deal about this release? Well, my research shows that this was an independent release, and there were only like 500 copies made, and this is really the only EP that he's ever released before getting signed and sort of blowing up later on. So this is sort of a very rare release. Again, only 500 copies made. Sales are pretty consistent on this release, and it most recently sold in 2024 for $3,800. Only a year prior to that, in 2023, somebody sold it at $83. And again, before that in 2022, it was at $621. So if you're somebody that likes holding on to CDs, hoping that they increase in value, Eminem's Slim Shady EP is definitely a one that if you find it, definitely pick it up. And if you've got it, I don't know, maybe hold on to it a little bit longer, because it seems every year it jumps in value. That brings us to the #1 most expensive CD sold on Discogs. And it's not a letdown, but you got to kind of reframe your thinking here, because this is definitely a unique release. And it's because, again, it's not a single CD release, it is a box set. Now, this is the Woodstock Back to the Garden Definitive 50th Anniversary Archive. Now, this was released by Rhino Records in 2019. This is not just one CD, but 38 CDs. It also comes with a Blu-ray included as well. Now, this has sold for as low as $3.98. Not sure who let it go for that. But at the highest, it sold for $4,949.98. It most recently sold in 2025 for $1,950. So if you are a Woodstock fan and you have a 38 CD compilation version of this event along with the Blu-ray, then you got a good deal probably when it was released. I'm not sure what it was originally sold for, but you know, like I said, it's now selling for at least $1,950 like it did just this month in 2025. So that is the most expensive CD or CD box set that's ever sold on Discogs. Well, there you have it. Those are the top 10 CDs sold on Discogs. Which one surprised you the most? Let me know in the comments below. I have no judgment for what anybody paid for any of these releases. If you got the money and you got to have it in your collection, more power to you. But also let me know in the comments what dollar figure surprised you the most for which release. I just thought it was fun to go through all these, and I don't know, I thought maybe there'd be some more well-known releases in here or something really obscure, and there was a good mix of both. But overall, this list surprised me, especially Def Leppard with that Mahogany box set. That one really took me by surprise. Now, the reason why I love going through these lists is because I still love going out and shopping for CDs. I do it as much as I can. Last year, we took a trip to Indianapolis and hit up a few record stores there where I found some great CDs. If you'd be interested in watching a video of me shopping at those stores, you can do so by clicking this video here.